Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. We've got good stuff to talk about today. Ryan Braun finally comes out with an apology, but is it too little, too late? The federal government has given the okay to an Indian gambling casino in Kenosha, but will it ever happen? We'll talk about President Obama's plan to rate colleges and then hand out federal aid for their students based on how they do in those ratings. And we will also talk about raising the speed limit in Wisconsin from 65 to 70 miles per hour. All right, let me introduce everybody. You know Joel McNally, longtime newspaper columnist, and Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, sometime host over on WISN Talk Radio, and of course Denise Callaway, communications and public relations professional. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, let's talk first about suspended Milwaukee Brewers superstar Ryan Braun. He finally issued a written apology to the media and fans. He admits using performance-enhancing drugs, accepts blame. He asked for forgiveness. Did it impress you as sincere or as something crafted by high-priced lawyers and big public relations advisors?
Well, I'm not very high-priced, but if Ryan Braun had asked for my advice, I would have told him to fess up a long, long time ago. I think this was too little, too late, and even the verbiage he used.
Yeah.
He said he made mistakes. No, a mistake is 2 + 2 = 5. That's a mistake. This is a major violation about cheating. Then he lied about it, tried to cover it up, tried to ruin the reputation of an innocent person. And then, as one commentator said this week, tried to play the race card. So I keep thinking, okay, maybe there's more that we haven't heard. It seems that there's always some new story coming out about him. And I'll get to you fans later. I'll have a statement later, and then he comes out, and I don't think it was very, very sincere. And I think a lot of fans, I know time heals all wounds, that old cliche, right? That old saying. And he comes back next year, and that's a long time from now. But I think a lot of people are going to still feel betrayed at that point. I don't think this apology goes very far.
Denise, is this him following the advice of his high-priced, expensive lawyers and his high-priced LAPR people? Or when you read that, did you say, wow, this guy is being honest and sincere?
Well, if he's following their advice, he needs to get his money back because it wasn't very effective. He would not even use those 3 little words, performance-enhancing drugs. He said, I used products in the past that, really, because of my nagging injury. And if you go back and take a look at it, well, exactly. And if you actually go back and take a look at it, he wasn't really injured during that time. But that's a little bit of fact that we'll go back and take a look at again. It did not seem sincere. It seemed to be something he was almost pushed into doing. For someone who stood up repeatedly in front of the media, mano a mano, saying, I didn't do this. This is a mistake. People are out to get me. The dog ate my homework, whatever else he had to say. For him to deliver this in writing and via email to people, I mean, really to me, was a little bit of a cowardly way out. If, in fact, you now have said, you know what? I didn't tell you the truth. I did use performance-enhancing drugs, and for whatever reason, I think that it was appropriate for me to use them, or I was desperate, whatever it was, he should have come out with the same fervor and in the same way that he said that he didn't do any of this and the truth would all come out. He should have come out and told the truth the same way. And I think that's what rings insincere about it with many people. He was very vocal about the fact that he didn't do it, and when he finally came clean, it was like he sent, a note home, in your kid's book bag to tell you that, he really had done something wrong. It took way too long for him to do it. It seemed very calculated. It did not seem sincere. And time heals all wounds, but it also wounds all heals. And I think that people are not going to be happy to see it. There it is.
Why not just
people aren't going to be happy to see him next year.
Book a room at the Fischer, a big ballroom, and walk out on stage and answer questions from anybody who wants to ask you a question.
What difference would it make? There wasn't anybody that was going to believe anything he said. His reputation has been totally trashed at this point. Actually, he lied so well the first time he lied that, no matter how sincere he sounded or looked this time, no one was going to believe it. But I do differ from my two colleagues here, as you well know.
That's okay. It makes
because
Okay.
the reason he didn't use the phrase performance-enhancing drugs is there's no evidence he used performance-enhancing drugs.
Now you sound like his lawyer.
I might, but I really do believe that the war on drugs within baseball has some of the same problems as the war on drugs in our society, which is that it's zero tolerance. It doesn't, there's no excuse. I thought the only thing that made sense to me, someone as talented and as great a baseball player as Ryan Braun, to do something that could get him thrown out of the game and suspended, the only thing that made sense to me, we know Ryan Braun is not a steroid pumped up monster. He's not one of those people who created a totally false person that was out there, knocking baseballs into the next county. He is a superstar baseball player, one of the best players in the game, and the only reason that made sense for him to use something that he thought he could get by with, which obviously he didn't, was to get over an injury and get back on the field and do what he's being paid millions of dollars to do, which is play baseball. But baseball doesn't accept that. Injuries to superstar baseball players or any baseball players are the things that the fans don't want to see, the teams don't want to see, and the players themselves, what really does wreck their careers if they can't get out there and do what they can do.
They also don't want to see cheaters on the field.
Well, see, by you calling it cheating,
what else could you call it?
Well, I would call it getting back and doing what you're paid to do,
Wow.
playing baseball. But let me also let me add one more thing.
All right.
Let me add one more thing. This is a ritual that people have to go through. It's like a politician getting caught drunk driving. He comes out and he apologizes, and it doesn't really matter what he says. He just goes through the rituals. The stupidest thing I read about this whole incident was an editorial in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which said the Milwaukee Brewers should just eat his $130 million contract.
That's not going to happen.
That's not gonna happen.
And fire one of the best players in baseball. The only way that Ryan Braun really overcomes this is to do exactly what he did after this incident. By the way, there were two things, the biogenesis investigation and the failed drug test. They both relate to the same thing, 2011. You know what he did in 2012 when he came back after he'd been caught doing that? He had one of his best years ever in 2012. And that's exactly what he's going to do when he comes back. We're going to have one of the best players in baseball back again. And believe me, the Brewer,
asterisk by his name. I mean, the problem is, Joel,
he's not going to get caught using those again. I'll tell you.
I'm sure maybe you'll find something else that isn't traceable yet. The problem is, the whole thing about this is how ferociously he defended himself.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the way he lied
it's a huge problem.
It's a
and
problem.
It really goes back to someone's integrity and
That's
whether or
why
not you can trust
what he does on the field is the only thing that matters.
Except he has made it a point to put himself
And the
outside the field.
sports writers have made it a point to
He-
trash his reputation.
But if he does well,
relentlessly.
people
You know
will
what?
say he's
They-
still on the stuff. And if he doesn't do well, people will say it's because he's not on the stuff.
They only trashed his reputation because he lied.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
He brought it on himself.
Next topic. For many years, a group has been trying to get federal approval to build an Indian gambling casino in Kenosha. The Potawatomi, who run the casino here in Milwaukee, are completely against the idea. They think it would kill their business. This thing is a long way from becoming a reality, but it's certainly now a possibility.
But I think it's slim. The Potawatomi have quite a bit of clout. They do a lot of great things for the community. Now they will cry foul and they will play the poor game. No one's going to buy that because every year when it comes to income and revenue, even though their revenues are down, according to a report this week, they're always in the top 10 casinos in America in what they rake in. But if they object, then that kills this this casino. So the locals down there, they have to have some say. But apparently, if one tribe says we don't want them here, that puts the kibosh on it, and I think you've already got one that's ready to say nay.
But if all of a sudden there's some magical agreement between the Potawatomi and the Menominee who want to build the place and casino, then it might be closer to being a reality.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen. I really do agree with Kevin. It's highly competitive. We've seen just within the past couple of weeks the series of ads starting to run again, really talking about the fact that we already have, in essence, enough casinos in Wisconsin. Do we need another one? Do we need another one that isn't even on tribal land that traditionally and historically belonged to that tribe? I don't think it's going to happen. I do think we've probably reached a saturation point with casinos. I think it would be really hard to say what is the pressing need that we have where, somehow you can't drive half an hour in one direction, one way or the other, and get to a casino. Not going to happen.
See, now, even though Governor Walker said, I will not approve another casino unless all the tribes say okay, there's no guarantee that Governor Walker is going to be governor forever.
Oh, and Governor Walker got a lot of money from the Potawatomi, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Menominee, spread a lot of money in his direction right now. And money does change what everybody claims that they can tolerate in politics, for sure. And it's a long shot. I agree. I think so far the Potawatomi's money has been enough to make sure that they didn't have any competition, and I expect that to be the case too. But I don't know. It'll be an interesting, interesting political battle to watch.
It's such a hard sell for the Potawatomi, God love them, but to say that if a casino goes up in Kenosha, that suddenly they're going to suffer. I don't think many people are going to fall for that argument.
The Potawatomi have just spent a ton of money, and they're in the process of doing that.
And they continue to spend money.
Right, but to build a new hotel, it is a matter of wanting to make sure that they protect their business investments. Let's face it, I mean, part of the reason, the Menominee Valley, not the whole reason, but we take a look at some of that commercial development, having that casino there has really helped to bring new life there. I don't think anyone wants to be in a situation where potentially you risk seeing that kind of growth stall.
And what they see Kenosha as is just picking off all their customers from Chicago. And I don't blame them for fighting as hard as they can against doing that. You build a hotel for people who are coming here from other cities.
Exactly.
And I still think that they've got enough not just political clout, but mainly political clout bought with all that money I don't particularly like going down to the casino because I see a lot of people who I don't think should be there, and it's not a pretty sight sometimes. But it is the one way that Indians have found out. We took their land away, the thing that was most important to them, and now they're taking our money away, which is what's most important to us.
Doing okay.
All right, next topic. President Obama announced a plan the other day aimed at addressing the high cost of a college education and for holding colleges more accountable. He wants colleges to be ranked based on a number of different factors, such as tuition, graduation rates, how many of the students are able to graduate on time, what their debt load is once they get out, and then their earning power after they get a degree. And based on those rankings, he would then determine how much federal aid the schools got to hand out to financial aid to the students who go there. But isn't the easy availability of federal money one of the things that everybody blames for the high cost of education now? They said because federal money is available, colleges have been not reluctant to just raise tuition because they know you could go out and get a loan.
Yes, that's very, very true. All right, hear me out. I think this is commendable that the president talks about this. This is the next big fiscal crisis in America that not enough people are talking about. Information is power. I hate to throw another cliche out there, but the average consumer in America today is well equipped with knowledge and information about microwaves and espresso machines and so forth. But really, when it comes to picking out a four-year college, is fairly ignorant. So all the information that can be put out there for comparison purposes is great. I worry, though, when you tie federal financial aid to a statistic like graduation rates, if that doesn't hurt the student that you're trying to help. We can all make those graduation rates go up by simply taking in taking in students who are going to, graduate, who are going to pass their tests, and who won't drop out. You can lower standards so that nobody flunks, and I don't think anybody wins in that sort of situation. And it's only half of the equation. You've got to do something about the high tuition, but also that giving a kid a tuition break is somewhat meaningless if after he or she graduates there isn't optimistic hope or for job prospects employment-wise in the job market. I think that's more important than whether the student gets a tuition break. Let's work on doing something about unemployment in the job market so that the diploma can lead to something prosperous.
We've all seen those bills in the mail of the tuition bills, and they are astronomical. So what do we do to control that?
Well, I think this is a start. This isn't everything, but it's a start. And while everything Kevin just said is true too, we got to work on employment once they get out of college so they can pay back loans. But
over half are unemployed or underemployed.
But the important thing about this particular start are two things. One thing, this thing of tying federal funds to graduation rates, real placement in jobs, things like that. I think what that's basically going to do is get rid of a lot of those fly-by-night phony universities that are popping up on every street corner, mainly to get federal funds, and have a terrible record for getting people employed afterwards, or in fact that their diplomas are worth anything at all. The second thing, and I think even more important, that the president suggested was linking the loan repayments to income afterward. Because when you graduate with a $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 debt, and that is one you can't even ever wipe away with bankruptcy or anything else. And if you don't make money and don't have the income to pay it, that has been ruining people's lives instead of enhancing their lives, which is what a college education is supposed to do.
Should the federal government?
The president pointed out, teachers can now repay their debts with a limit of 10% of their income. Through some programs, and we just need to expand those programs, tie loan repayment to income, because if they can't pay it back, the costs are ridiculous to start with, and you're saddling 19-year-old kids with lifetime debts.
Should the federal government even be in the business of financing education?
Sure, it's an investment.
Yes, it should be. It's an investment in our economy. It's an investment in the future of this country. If we take a look at what we need to do to be able to grow, a part of it, whether you call them entrepreneurs or you call them job creators, we need people who have been trained, who have the skills, who have the knowledge, the ability, and the desire to be the economic engine of this country. And part of that does come from individuals who have graduated from four-year institutions. Kevin hit on this. When we take a look at the student loan debt that young people have now, it is astronomical. There is more that's owed for student loans than there is for credit card debt. So what happens if you're 22 years old, you come out of college, you owe $50,000? It means there's a lot of stuff you don't do that helps to drive the engine of this economy. You're not buying a new car. You're not buying a new house. If you're buying a house, you're buying a house that may be one that you can afford, but you're not purchasing new furniture, new appliances to go in it, because right, I mean, it really is going to saddle and hamper our economy for decades to come if we don't find a way to figure this out. In some states, our home state of Indiana, actually the legislature there is now tying state aid to some of these very things that the president is talking about. And I don't think you could accuse the legislature of Indiana of necessarily being very friendly to Democratic ideas or the president's ideas. The reality of it is the loan dollars have dried up some, but they have been too easy for kids to get, and they've been too easy without students having an expectation and an understanding of the fact that this is money they're going to have to repay, and they've got to figure out a way to do it.
All right, next topic. Wisconsin is one of the only states in the upper Midwest with a 65-mile-per-hour speed limit. There's a proposal now to increase that to 70 miles an hour, which is probably what most people drive anyway when they see the sign that says 65.
You have to empathize with the state assemblyman who is proposing this, because he's absolutely right. He went out and tested it. He lives about 2 hours and some change from the state capitol. And he went out and did the speed limit one day to work. And I'm sure that he was the only one doing it, and people were passing him by like he was standing still, and he maybe got the one-finger salute many times too. I mean, nobody, very few people obey the speed limit. But I don't see this going anywhere for a couple of reasons. It takes two to tango. You got to get this through the Senate and the Assembly. If he's right that it's going to just swim through the Assembly, that's fine. But in the other house, there doesn't seem to be any support or anybody lunging forward to say, I'm on top of this, I want to sponsor this. The main reason I think that this bill could run into many problems is the whole safety issue. The stats don't lie. Yeah, a lot of other states have upped their speed limit, but they have seen a corresponding increase then in deaths and injuries, and on rural interstates too, which is where he would the sponsor of this bill would like to see this take place. So I don't see it going anywhere.
Is that why people will vote against it?
Why I think most people just aren't clamoring to is actually just what we said here. This is the most agreeable night we've had here for a long time.
We still got time here.
The thing is, if you raise the speed limit to 70, the real speed limit will be 75 or 80. Mm-hmm. If you raise it to 75, it'll be 80 or 85.
You just set your cruise to 9 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you're fine. The state patrol will tell you, they'll let you go.
There's no need for this law. People aren't getting arrested for driving 70 in Wisconsin.
Right.
They aren't. And if you're bordering on getting dangerous if you're encouraging people to drive faster than that.
I love this argument that it's good for business. Really? For the undertaker, maybe?
Yeah,
30 seconds?
I agree with everything that the two of you have said. I know. What a day. What a day. But I do think the one advantage of it is that it's really clear to people that, you can't sit up there and point to that sign that says 65 because the sign really is 70. As much of a hazard as it is for people who are going too fast, it's also for people who are going too slow. So the only advantage I can see of 70 is that it's a level playing field for everybody. That's how fast you need to be going.
All right. Changing direction. Next week marks a milestone in American history, the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Milwaukee Public TV will present a very special program that we've put together, a special presentation of our Black Nouveau show that we're calling For Jobs and Freedom, 50 Years and Counting. It will air Tuesday night at 7 o'clock p.m. We hope you can watch. Plenty has changed in those 50 years, of course, but in some ways, says Rick Horowitz, we're still fighting the same battles. Rick.
Anyone who tells you we haven't made any progress on race in the past 50 years is wearing blinders. But anyone who tells you that we've completed the journey, that sort of thing is all behind us, they're fooling themselves, or they're trying to fool you. At the time of the March on Washington, it's good to remember this, there were whole sections of our country where black people, Negroes, weren't able to cast a vote, weren't able to be full participants in American democracy. It's a lot better now. The Voting Rights Act and federal enforcement of the Voting Rights Act help see to that. That's progress. But to some people, that's a problem. Or how else can you explain what Republican-controlled legislatures in many states have been up to lately? Cutting back on voting hours, eliminating early voting and weekend voting and same-day registration, closing certain polling places, requiring new forms of identification that particular voting groups tend not to have. Particular voting groups that tend not to vote for Republicans. Discrimination? Voter suppression? The Supreme Court wants us to believe that that's all in the past. No need to have the federal government as a watchdog anymore. Let the states do whatever they want to do. And what they want to do, the evidence, even in just the past few months, is perfectly clear on this. They want to make it harder for certain kinds of people to cast their votes. Oh, it's more subtle now than it was 50 years ago. The rules are more nuanced. They don't prohibit this or that group of Americans from voting. They just make it harder and harder for them to vote. Meanwhile, they keep shouting about voter fraud, even though in the real world, voter fraud almost never happens. And even though the new rules they're writing wouldn't do anything to prevent the kinds of voter fraud they say they're so worried about. Doesn't matter. They say if even one vote is fraudulently cast, the integrity of the voting process is destroyed. Then what about the integrity of the voting process when hundreds and thousands of people are prevented from voting by rules that are written to do exactly that? Where's all their worry about integrity now? And one more question, 50 years after a march on Washington that was all about fairness, why is the Republican Party so afraid of a fair fight?
Thank you, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.